Welcome to Liberty Free to Be, the podcast that celebrates women finding their voice, their confidence, and their own version of freedom. I'm your host, Rachel Peru, speaker, model, storyteller, and a champion of showing up as your most unapologetic self. Each episode, I sit down with incredible women who share the real, powerful, sometimes messy stories that shaped who we are today. So settle in. This is your reminder that you are free to grow, free to change, and free to be fully, fabulously you. Welcome back to a new week of Liberty Free to Be. And this month seems to have been lots of conversations for me around the menopause because I have so many women in my life that are doing incredible work to help and support others. And it just so happens that this week's subject is following on from a conversation with Emma Neville last week. And this week I am joined by Claire Hurst, who is the founder of the Rebalance Clinic. And I met Claire last year when she invited me to her clinic, and I had some acupuncture and we had a long conversation about gut health and creating a toolkit for myself on how I can support myself better through the menopause. I honestly came away with so much information and implemented small daily changes that have really improved how I feel about my body and how I am feeling in my body. So I wanted to share Claire with you all today. So I can't wait to talk to her. Her breadth of knowledge is incredible. And, you know, she has done so much research and is now not only helping women and supporting them through the menopause, but she's also training and helping practitioners in the NHS and in corporates to really understand what is going on with women's bodies and how we can be served better. So really looking forward to digging into this conversation with Claire today. Grab a coffee and enjoy. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Well, as I mentioned in your introduction, Claire and I first met actually in her practice. We live locally to each other, and I had a wonderful experience of acupuncture. So I can't wait to share all the amazing work that you're doing, Claire. Obviously, the Rebalance Clinic and everything that you're doing, but how did this all start for you? I suppose we need to start back at the beginning because obviously your own journey into the menopause is what kind of helped spark this, isn't it?
I think there's so much happens in the menopause that changes women's lives, isn't there?
Yeah.
It really is a transformational stage. So I hit the menopause quite early and very, very much before anyone was talking about it. You know, went to the GP. I think I'd struggled for 3 to 5 years before that. And so I went to the GP, who in fairness was great, and said, okay, you sound like you're depressed. We'll give you some antidepressants. You're not sleeping. We'll give you some sleeping tablets. Oh, and it might be you want to try HRT because I had a history of fertility and IVF. They said, oh, you might be going into an early menopause.
Right.
So, I mean, for me, the antidepressants and the sleeping tablets weren't an option. It's not how my brain works. I'm always like, well, surely we need to figure out why it's happening. And I did try HRT and it just didn't make any difference. For me, I was one of the ones, I know for some people it works, it didn't work. And the wheels were falling off my life. I was at a big meeting and it was my project meeting. And in this meeting, I just remembered thinking, I can't remember people's names. I can't remember what the heck I'm talking about. So I managed to get
panic.
out. Yeah, I managed to get out the meeting, ended up at Leeds Station and looked up at the board and thought, I don't know where I live. And I think for me, the terrifying thing was that I had no emotion. It was nothing. There was a nothingness. And I was like, eventually a gentleman came over to me in a high vis actually and said, are you all right, love? Because you're crying. And I thought, I didn't even know I was crying.
Mm.
And I said, oh, it sounds daft. I think I've got dementia actually, because I don't know where I live. And he was like, oh, my wife's had this, you know, she left the keys in the fridge all the time type thing. He was so lovely. And we found out my way home, came home, found a ticket actually in my pocket, came home and just burst into tears. And I just thought, this cannot be it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the pivotal moment where certainly within a month I'd left work and was enrolled on lots of programs, lots of academic things, acupuncture, holistic health, because by nature, I'm a researcher and research. What are other countries doing? What are other people doing? And that was where the journey started. Sort of, gosh, it must be 12, 13 years ago now.
And it's like you said, that's scary, isn't it? To suddenly be able to just not function properly for no reason whatsoever. That's scary.
And actually, I was desperately unhappy. I didn't I didn't like my life at all. I thought I thought it was my relationships. You know, there was so many things. I mean, in clinic, I see patients and have had patients who have got divorced and then reconnected with their husband when we've got their menopause in check, when
Well,
we've understood it, when they've so happily married again. You know, this is how transformational it is, and I think that that's what's really challenging for women, actually.
and it's really interesting for you to say that because we always take HRT for granted, I think. I think people just assume that that's the go-to magic. And it doesn't work for everybody. And some people, for medical reasons, can't take it. But it doesn't mean to say there are not ways of being able to manage your menopause without it. And I think that's a really important message because lots of women are worried that if they can't take it for whatever reason, then they're doomed. And there's no way of getting through this.
And even those that do take it, you know, the statistic is there's less than 15% of women going through the menopause in the UK taking it anyway. And of those 15% that are taking it, 65% still experience debilitating symptoms. The reality is, this idea of this one fix for all women, regardless of every body size, stress,
Yeah.
you know, medical conditions, that this magic patch, gel or spray is going to fix everything. I just find it so frustrating because the reality is we are beautifully complex. How can if one thing really fixed the menopause, why do you think there's a massive resurgence of experts, books, language, you know, there is no one fix. And I think that's the first stop for me with my patients is to go, you cannot take a pill. You cannot change one thing. This is a lifestyle change. This is about a whole reconnection, a rediscovery of how your body works. And actually, once you've got started on that journey, it's pretty cool. You know,
Yes.
it's an amazing journey.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, because you're understanding your body more than ever, I think. It's once
oh,
you really learn to connect with yourself, you're
and
listening to your body so much more than you ever have done.
yeah, but also, you know, we talk about menopause. Everyone thinks about it's about sort of our ovaries and our womb, and actually, it's nothing to do with that. Well, it is, but most of the changes are actually neurological. They're in the brain. There's an area of the brain. There's a shift in the prefrontal cortex, which is our sort of rationale decision making part of the brain, and this becomes a more dominant in midlife. So as our hormones change, and it's actually some professionals and researchers call it the matriarch effect. And what this means is women post reproduction become more decisive, more direct, and less socially deferential.
It's really interesting, isn't
We
it?
actually become a better version of ourselves. No
Mm.
one's talking about that.
No, and we need to because I found it, yes, there are symptoms to manage, but on the whole, I've actually found it really liberating because I do know who I am now and I've never been more comfortable in my skin and my body. And it's not perfect, but it's about just really being in tune with myself, probably for the first time ever in my life, actually.
Yeah. And isn't this the conversation that should be everywhere?
Yeah.
Explaining to women, this is not a dead end. This is a
Mm.
liberation. This is a fundamental change. But the journey there is hard. The problem is the noise from social media, the noise from, you know, we've had this conversation already a little bit. I think sometimes it's the noise within your social circle. And I
Yes.
think sometimes some of the friends that we have that on the surface are projecting this idea of this perfect life, the idea that you know, I think that we see that sometimes, possibly more than it's projected, actually, if I'm honest. I don't think people going around saying, I'm amazing, you're not. I
Yeah.
don't think that's what's happening. But I think this comparison that we have, that we think other people are just thriving and they're all
Yes.
fine. And we become this sense of self, our understanding of ourself is so challenged that we then don't talk about it. I mean, 90% of women still don't talk honestly about the menopause. And so, you know, if women were not struggling with the menopause, well, I wouldn't have a business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
nor would millions of other people be writing books and selling things. So I think there is I think there's for me, the conversations, even in cafes when I overhear things, or even when people come to me, is it's all around menopause HRT.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think that that serves women, and I don't think the doctors are trained very well. I don't think doctors have got the time. And so we now have also basically a gap between those who can afford to pay for care and those that can't, those that
Yes.
can afford to go privately and those that can't. And that's something that I'm working very hard to shift. I've got some, I see lots of people for free. I see lots of breast cancer patients for free, just because I think that everyone should have access to this. I've got a little YouTube channel where
Absolutely.
the videos, I try and share it myself on my social media, because this should be of what I tell people. My knowledge should be available in every GP practice
Yes.
for free, for
Yes.
absolutely for free. And
Yeah.
that's part of the research. I'm doing some research with Leeds University. Once we get studies published, once we can prove scientifically that this system works, my rebalance method is scientifically proven, we've got the data, we can get it out there, this is when we'll see a shift. And if I
Because
could
it,
wage a magic wand, I would have the fantastic nurses in doctor's surgery undertaking the training that I've already got the
yeah.
program. I teach other practitioners so that they can offer that. And you can do it in groups. And
Yeah.
that's
Wouldn't that
so,
be amazing?
oh, it's my dream.
Yeah, I mean, I literally had conversations with my doctor, who was very supportive, but quite often turned around to me and said, "Well, what do you think? Because I don't know about this." I'm like, well, you know, there's still got such a long way to go, and we think that because everyone's talking about it now, that it's become a hot subject, that actually things have changed, but they haven't really grasped levels that much. So keep working with that. I think that would be amazing. But
Yeah.
you kind of built your own toolkit to get through this, didn't you? So what does that toolkit look like?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, it never stops growing. There's about a 17-year gap between something being scientifically and medically proven and then that being actually available within the conventional medicine sphere. So there's quite a lot of really exciting research out there. So for me, it's always evolving.
Mm,
So I started off with acupuncture, did all my training in that. uh, and one of the reasons was when I was really starting my research is there's a study, lots of studies done actually, on the fact that men with prostate cancer, which is an estrogen cancer, so they get put in the menopause. So they get hot flushes, anxiety, can't sleep, put on weight, all the challenges. And there is loads of studies to show that acupuncture had fundamentally supported and changed that in a really positive way. So that was where I sort of went down that route. My dad, who was a general practitioner, he also went to China in the late 80s and did acupuncture within the NHS for years. So it was on my radar.
yeah.
From that kind of expanded into certainly gut health. We cannot ignore the link between your gut microbiome and your mental and physical health. And that's fantastic because it's easy to fix.
Yeah,
Then,
I have to say the conversation, Claire, that you and I had about this, because I had a bit of a sugar addiction, and I was honest about it. And I have, after having the conversation with you last year, I have really cut down, and I do feel so much better. I've got more energy and more level throughout the day. It has made such a big difference. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. And isn't that fantastic? Because actually, this is this great example of I facilitate, I give you the information you need, you make the change. So when you make the change, it's lasting change, it's habit forming. It's not
Yeah,
rocket science, it's not an expensive supplement. This is just nature, and nature nearly always provides anyway. So gut health is a huge part of what I do. We look at cortisol. So I do lots of work with my patients on cortisol, what it looks like, how it manifests, and how we can effectively reduce that. And there's so many different ways, from breath work to simple exercise. Blood sugar or insulin resistance, as we call it, blood sugar levels are fundamental. So we can talk about hormones all day long, but actually, if you want to rebalance your menopause, we have got to get your cortisol levels stable, and we have got to get your blood sugar level and not peaking and troughing, because until we do that, nothing is going to work. And both of those are done with really natural, really simple, really effective ways. And then things like looking at how inflammation is formed, looking at the lymphatic system, I look at the endocrine system, we look at nutrition. And whilst I'm not a nutritionist, there are some very effective ways, and we talked about them as well, in ways in which we can fundamentally change, prioritizing protein. You can eat in certain food orders. We can change our diet really easily without you having to eat separately from everybody else in your family, or having a horrible diet sheet that says you can't have all the really lovely things in life that we all like. And so, and that has evolved into, there are some supplements that work, most don't, but there are some really important supplements that I would go down. And that has, I mean, literally it goes on and on, to sleep hygiene, to exercise. It's a beautiful, multi-layered toolkit that everybody will have a different one, because there'll be fasting is another thing that I do regularly and work on. Some patients love it, some patients hate it. But again, you can't buy a book that tells you how to fast. If you put fasting in your system that isn't right for it, you haven't got your cortisol under check, and you haven't listen to how your body responds to fasting, you put yourself under more pressure. So there's all sorts of tools. And actually the majority of women, literally, it is such a privilege, because they come in week one, there's lots of tears, there's lots of frustration, anger, of course. And then at the end of the time that we spend with them, sometimes it's 6 weeks, sometimes it's 2 months. I mean, I still have patients ongoing I've been seeing for years and years. They've emerged. They've re-emerged. It is amazing. It really is. And I think people are really surprised by how simple it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot to do with the fact that there's so much noise, particularly on social media, around this, about different people telling you to try this product, try that product, that you just don't know where to start. So you breaking it down into those really simple steps is really effective. And I completely get that. But how difficult is it though? Some women, when they're really low and they're really struggling, find it difficult to even make that first step of making a change, because they just don't have that motivation. If they could start with one thing, what would you say is the first place to start?
That's a brilliant question. For me, your cortisol. Right. So cortisol is released by the adrenal glands. They sit just above the kidney. And they have got an inverse relationship between the pineal gland in the brain. And the pineal gland is what releases really nice neurotransmitters like serotonin and helps you sleep. So cortisol, you have elevated cortisol, too much cortisol. Often we can physically feel it, but actually a key sign of that: general inflammation, inability to lose weight, low energy levels, sugar or salt cravings, poor sleep, all of those, overwhelm, anger, show me cortisol. So the first thing you can do is, the simplest way you can look at cortisol is what you do in the morning. So if you're getting up because you've had poor sleep, you're exhausted, you feel fatigued, you grab caffeine. We've all done it. Of course we have. So for me, I would say, and it's tough, don't have the caffeine, have the herbal tea, give yourself time. Often you're not hungry, you're eating because of habit. Listen to your tummy. Now, if you're starving, the first thing that goes into your mouth simply must be protein and fiber, and not carbohydrates. So Greek yogurt, nuts, berries and seeds, and some blueberries on. Eggs, gift from the gods. Eggs are a great thing if you can eat them. Starting your day and having that then helps support your body to start releasing more serotonin and dopamine, fills your body with protein and stabilizes your blood sugar. So that is it. That would be my number one with almost all my patients. I say, what are you eating in the... And actually that first meal of the day might be 11 or 12 o'clock, and then you can have your caffeine. We're not banning caffeine, just have it after that. And then in the evening, just eat more protein generally, have less carbohydrates generally. And if you can, go for a walk after your evening meal. If you can't go for a walk, do some exercise, squats, vacuum the house, put the washing on, walk around. The worst thing you can do after your evening meal is sit, because we need to burn the sugar off.
Yeah. And then we go
So
to bed and we can't sleep because it's not.
yeah,
Yeah.
and phones
Yes.
in
Yeah.
bedroom. It's not great. And I know it's boring, and I'm sorry, but actually the evidence, the science is there. that says don't have them in your room.
Yeah, I definitely have. I've stopped having mine in the room now. I have it outside in my study, and I am so much better for it. And I try really hard not to go on it till 9 o'clock in the morning now as well. It's not the first thing I reach for, and it does make a difference. It is those little tweaks, isn't it?
It totally is a natural daylight in the morning, even if you just spend 5-10 minutes in the morning before a screen. So natural light before screen light is really important as well. That also changes the way the brain starts the day.
Did you have a kind of light bulb moment when you were going through this process yourself, where you suddenly kind of thought, actually, yeah, I am feeling so much better? Do you
Yeah,
remember the time when it shifted?
I do actually. And it was about, I'm going to say about a year, because I literally just had, I bought every book, you name it. I was reading it. I was going on every podcast I could listen to. I was going, the courses and programs that I were doing. Some were amazing, some were utterly dreadful. And I remember I had two quite small children at the time. We were at the park, and inevitably one child ran that way, one child ran that way. And I didn't have that searing fear or anger. It was just, I've got this. And it was that layer of health that I had been missing for so, so long. My sleep had improved. I was really doing well with my exercise. Of course, I was still eating chocolate and having bags of crisps and the occasional glass of wine. Of course, I was. I was having a nice time. But I felt, remember, I was almost in tears and thinking, I'd forgotten I could be this person.
That's really powerful, isn't it? The fact that you do literally almost, wake up as somebody else when it first starts. It's like waking up in somebody else's body, and it's like, who am I? It's very difficult, but when you come out the other side of it, it makes you realize how difficult it was actually.
Yeah. And I think that is a really big part of the menopause journey, reflecting back on where you've come from, where you were, and that acceptance as well. We do have a different body. It does work differently. But
Yeah.
actually, there is this lovely reconnection with yourself. I often hear my patients say it's the first time I've ever understood my body.
Gosh. I mean, that's sad in a way that it's taken us all to our 40s and 50s and 60s, isn't it, to get to that point? What a waste of all that time when we were younger and we didn't appreciate them or weren't connected to them. It seems quite sad, really.
It is, but it is this neurological shift, you know.
Mm,
There is when we look at the brain and we look at how the brain rewires and changes, there is a definite neurological shift. And in Chinese medicine, there's a yin phase where we put everybody else first and nurture and look after ourselves. And then this is our yang phase. This is where we start to put ourselves in the center of our decision making process. So, actually, culturally around the world, it's accepted that actually this is women's time to rise. And that's in cultures all over the world. So, there's obviously a
yes.
really important part of it. And I'm not sure at 20 and 30 I'd have listened like I now
No.
listen.
But how important now is it to pass that message down the line? Because I do feel like we've made massive strides for our generation, but it's the younger ones coming up that have been fed all this fear about what's coming. How do we reach them more?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I've got another business. So because of the nature of my patients, a lot of them are, very senior leaders, business owners, law firm directors, civil servants. I've been going into corporates for quite a few years talking about menopause because we've lost 1 million women that we know of through menopause. 65% of women have considered leaving work because of menopause symptoms. This is not a
Gosh,
female issue. This is a business issue. So when I go into those businesses, one of the modules that we do, and one of the ways we talk to is empowering and getting the younger generation, not to be terrified, but they are terrified of the menopause, but also the learnings that they've got now. Can you imagine if we'd have started listening 5 years before we did? So
yes,
log how don't accept the fact that in your mid-30s you're just stressed or it's just life. Start logging symptom changes if your sleep patterns change, if you find that your anxiety levels are higher and you don't fancy going out, or if you can't lose weight. And in your 40s, as that becomes more prevalent, it isn't just because you're a working mum at the height of your career, it is hormonal changes. So understanding those and saying, look, most women don't even know that what the menstrual cycle is. they don't understand the hormones that rise and fall within it. So once we explain that as well, they go, oh, right. So the week before my period, when I feel vulnerable and tired and crave chocolate, that's progesterone, is it? Yeah. So eat more phytoestrogens, keep hydrated. So that connection with their menstrual cycle is a really lovely way for us to then help and support them as they get older and the cycle changes.
It
You know,
feels like there's such a long way to go, though, doesn't it? It feels like, if this was a male issue, this would have all been sorted out years ago, is what I can't help thinking about. Because, like you say, the education starts young and in schools, doesn't it? And if we get that message right and understanding, then women would have such an easier time with it.
it'd be a whole different world.
Yeah,
Whole different world. We would be empowered and understanding, and businesses would have systems in place to help and support women during that time. There'd be education. I do think we will get menopause education in schools. I do
mm,
think that is coming, but I don't think it's enough. I think it's about there being this dialogue all the time for women to go, look, it's fine if things change. That's what this means, and that's what this means, rather than this hearing it on social media, which is, the I always say the internet is a skip. It's not a library.
mm,
If somebody is
yes,
ever promising you anything on social media, think twice, because
yes.
there is no magic fix. And the problem is we desperately want there to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I'd like to ask, because I'm on HRT, I've been on it since 2017.
Yeah.
And one thing that nobody's ever addressed with me is, how long do you stay on it? When does a woman know it's the right time for her to come off it? Is
Yeah.
there a right time?
It's, yeah. No is the answer. That's so individualized. There used to be a train of thought that after 10 years, it was the general consensus. So for some, it was shorter. We had to come off HRT.
Mm,
And actually now the research shows that that isn't the case, and that women who are on HRT and doing very well and find that it is helping and supporting them and don't have underlying health conditions are advised that you could very well stay on it. I think that if women are staying on it because they're terrified that something's going to happen to their heart or their bones, then that is a little.
yeah.
The benefits of HRT are that it does support cardiovascular health and can support bone health, but so can resistance training, exercising, nutrition, so if you are someone that decides, actually, I'm not wanting to be on HRT, you don't have to put your health at risk by then coming off it. But again, this is something that needs discussing with a general
Yes.
practitioner who's got specific training to balance it out. Um, it is so personal to everybody. Certainly for me, if there was someone with osteoporosis, if they're not being offered the bisphosphonates, which is an infusion or a tablet you can have to support bone health, there's some nice evidence that HRT can support bone health. However, you still have to do your resistance training, your impact training, the good walking, perhaps looking at your calcium levels in your diet. I think for me, if people think HRT is just going to fix everything, it's that disconnect again. It's that magic fix
Yes.
that doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah, and that disconnect, that's such an important part of all this. And like
Yes.
you've said, I think it is a really positive aspect of it, is that you have that connection with your body. So, how do we kind of get that positive message out? Because it has such a bad rap, the menopause. How can we shift people's mindset to understand that, it can be a really amazing time of your life to go through this and come out the other side of it?
Think we have just got to shout loud. I think we've got to give really good, simple advice. Everybody thinks this is complicated. It isn't. There's simple, effective steps. I think it's about. I mean, this is where social media does come into its own. Finding the right people that are saying the right messages. I think one of the big problems in social media is that there's lots of experts in a lane. So there'll
Yes.
be a nutritionist that will be telling you this, and there'll be somebody else exercise that will be telling you to do these 5 exercises to dissolve your belly fat in 5
Yeah.
seconds. I think you've got to be quite wise about those sort of people, because they're just looking at one aspect. So it's about finding a practitioner online that is offering all solutions, because you've got to pick the ones that you like.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, you can't. We've all done it, haven't we? We've tried every diet and every exercise routine,
God, yeah. Spent,
and it doesn't
probably
work.
20 years on yo-yo dieting probably, and lots of money, ridiculous amounts of money
Oh,
on.
huge sums of money, and also at a time when now where we are so vulnerable, we believe everything. I see my patients; they come in, they have bags with hundreds and hundreds of pounds worth of supplements, and I mean, they don't work. That's the reality. They're not going to work for you. They are not going to fix what you want it to fix.
If there was one supplement that you could choose that stands out that you would say, yes, I think you should try and get that, is there one that stands out to you?
I think if you were asking me this in the winter months, it would be vitamin D. I think the
Right.
evidence on vitamin D is just absolutely a no-brainer. And I think, again, it always depends on what people's main. I'm not a massive fan of taking lots of different ones and hoping that one works. I
Yeah.
think that if somebody came to me and they had a specific imbalance, for example, sleep is a really nice one. There is some evidence that certain supplements work better than others. But here's the thing, the evidence on magnesium is quite cool,
Right.
actually. But I see it in clinic all the time. There are patients that take a magnesium supplement and they feel better. Why? Because they were magnesium deficient.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
why it works. Actually, things like ashwagandha, L-theanine have got much better evidence on them for supporting. So I think I don't think there is one supplement.
No. Right.
Honestly, I don't. I think there's some very natural things, like if you're going to take collagen, make sure that you take good levels of vitamin C. And if you're not getting that through your diet, you have to take those together. People who take iron supplements, just make sure that you're taking it on an empty tummy and away from caffeine. So there's lots of more sensible things for us to do. If someone sits down with me and says, I've got poor bone health, I'm like, well, you need to stop drinking tea. Tea can leach calcium from the bone. So it's about us working in that way. And I think that's why anything that says I'm a menopause supplement and it's got 15 different ingredients in,
Yes.
you know, take it. And if you feel better, fantastic. But they're often you take something and then you think, oh, that's not working. I need another and another. And it's that whole, I call it the failure ladder.
Yeah.
So I think I think if we get gut health sorted, get cortisol sorted, get your blood sugar regulated, there's probably, unless you eat a really poor diet, very few supplements you would need.
Yeah. Thank you for your honesty because it's refreshing. Because I do think the menopause has been kind of branded for marketing, hasn't it? And there's lots of big companies making lots of money off the women's menopause brands. And I think it's really refreshing to say, actually, a lot of these you don't need. You can get this naturally, and you can get this in other ways. I think it's really,
Definitely. And actually, you know, I I think if you spend the time to get the foundation right, the supplements you need are going to be pretty few and far between. And they change, of course. Think about how much your body changes throughout the year. So I had breast cancer a couple of years ago. So I'm now in a brutal medical menopause. And so I still have a cycle. So the idea of you taking the same supplement every single day of every single week also doesn't make sense, because sometimes I wake up in the morning, my inflammation is worse than it was before. So then I'll be taking the supplements that and eating the right food to support that. So it's that as well. I think that's a bit of a con.
and
Say it.
also I think there is that thing of, people think that, oh, you're doing the job you're doing, you've got all this knowledge. Every day is an easy day for you now. You've got it cracked, you're sorted. But you obviously have bad days, like all of us do. What do you do on your bad days to try and get you out of that mindset? What works for you the most?
Yeah. And actually, honestly, sometimes I just wallow. I
Mm,
just do what everybody else does and feel really sorry for myself and sad and eat salt and vinegar crisps. And that is the truth, because
yeah,
we can't always go, I'm having a tough day, right, this
yes.
is what I'm getting. We can't. For my number one thing that I do is I look at my hydration, and particularly electrolytes for me are an absolute game changer. So simple, so effective. We see a 3 to 5% drop in hydration in the brain can increase your menopause symptoms by up to 30%.
Gosh.
And so electrolytes are a really quick, effective way of actually getting the fluid. Instead of it just being in the system, it actually pushes the fluid into the cells. So electrolytes would be one. Don't go for anything flavored. Go for something that's got 4 ingredients in, usually 3 salts and a magnesium. So, stay away from anything flavored or fizzy. Keep it really simple. I definitely get out if I
Yeah.
can walk, because I have got some, because of because I had chemotherapy and because I've been put in a medical menopause, unfortunately, it's led to quite serious deterioration in my spine health. And I also have just got something called sarcopenia, which is significant muscle loss. There are times when I find it quite hard to walk very far.
Mm.
But I'm on with that. I'm starting from scratch. I'm fine. It's a setback. It is not the end, and it is reversible.
Mm.
So I think getting outside for everybody, you know, is that, and I have to prioritize. I probably eat a lot more on those days. Generally, as women, we don't eat enough.
Yeah.
Certainly, we're not eating enough protein. We're not eating enough um, volume in terms of what we're eating.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we eat enough, so I tend to eat a lot more. A big omelette with 3, maybe even 4 eggs in it, and some smoked salmon and avocado, and for lunch, a huge salad with some chicken fillets or a big piece of fish, and in the evening, I'm really eating a lot more. That would be my sort of go-tos, and they work. You go, "Oh, yeah, it's not that
So
hard."
many good tips. Honestly, yeah, you are just a breadth of knowledge. I love talking to you, Claire. And there'll be so many people that are listening to this thinking, oh yeah, I can make these changes. You make things seem achievable. And instead of it being overwhelming. So thank you so much. My last 2 questions that I ask all my guests, because I think women, particularly women, are notoriously bad at accepting compliments. So if you were to pay yourself a compliment, what would it be?
It's really interesting. I often speak to myself in the mirror, and actually, um, today is just where you need to be, is the compliment, like the kind of thing I try to tell myself not to compare myself to others, not to stay in your lane, paddle your own canoe. And when I achieve that, one of the things that I do is I sometimes send myself a text late
I
at night
love that.
to say, I thought you did this really well today. I'm really chuffed with how you did that. So the first thing that I get when I pick up my phone the following day is a message from me to say, well done, because I think I have to be my number one fan. I have to be.
Yeah.
And so that's actually grounded in science. There's a thing called the reticular activating system, which is the gatekeeper to your brain. Your brain can only process 30 bits of information every second actively. There's probably another 20 that sit in the subconscious, and your brain is bombarded with up to thousands. And the reticular activating system resets every morning, and it says, right, what is important to my human today? So if you wake up in the morning and say, I've had a dreadful night's sleep. I feel dreadful. I'm going to have a crap day. I hate this. I'm not going to do that well. The reticular activating system goes, that is what is important to my human today, and find those messages to reinforce. So
Right.
you've got about half an hour to reset it. So in the morning, getting up and going, what a beautiful day. I'm lucky for this. Literally is that thing that when you book a holiday or when you discuss a movie with someone or think about buying a new car, you see that new car everywhere.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the reticular activating system telling you this is important to you. So we have control over how we can think. It's why in globally places that have morning gratitude practice have a significantly less mental health problem. So
I
that would
love
be my
that.
compliment, I think, is just today is where you need to be.
Yeah, amazing. I love the fact that you send yourself a text at night, and I'm going to do that and start
It's
doing that.
quite
I think
cool,
it's a
actually. I'm like, "Oh,
brilliant idea. It is. It's a brilliant idea. Love that. Thank you. And my last question: what does free to be mean to you?
think it would be living without apology." I have spent so much of my life being a chameleon and trying to fit in with people and this manageable, neat box. And I think for me, this is my opportunity now just to be me. If I don't want to see people, if I don't want to go to an event, if I don't feel comfortable doing something, I just don't do it anymore. And it's a very freeing thing. The FOMO
Yes,
has completely gone. And I'm not apologetic about not wanting to fit in anymore or not wanting to go to that event or have to say the right thing. So yeah, I think it is that living, I guess it's authentically, isn't it?
it is. Yeah, yeah. And so many women say the same thing. I love that. And it's that stage of life where we're actually concentrating on ourselves and putting ourselves first, and which is as it should be. So thank you so much. I could talk to you for hours, Claire. You've really moved me. I think what you've said to you makes so much sense and really helped demystify things. So thank you. And how can people find more about your Rebalance Clinic?
So it's at Rebalance Menopause on both Facebook and Instagram, and it's the rebalanceclinic.com on social media. So
Amazing. I'll put all the links on the show notes as well. But thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
thank you.
Hopefully,
I've
see
got
you
such a
soon.
lovely chat. Yeah, see you
Thank
soon.
you. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Well, I don't know about you, but I learnt a lot from that conversation with Claire, and I am actually still unsure where I am in the menopause. I think I'm just about through it, but I don't know for sure. And she has given me so much to think about. And I know from having a meeting with her last year and having acupuncture, which was amazing, that I did really come away with lots of different tips and tricks on how I can stay connected to my body and make those changes. So for me, it has been really reducing my alcohol. I hardly drink at all now. I don't have caffeine and I don't miss it. And yeah, reducing my sugar content as well, which has made a big difference to how I feel and how much energy I've got. So I love the fact that she's so honest as well about how overwhelming all these supplements can be. So why don't we really try and listen to our bodies a bit more and see what's out there that we can get naturally? Because it's out there and we don't need to have as much as we think. So love that conversation. Let me know what you think. I hope you found it useful and helpful. And one thing that really touched me was when she said that she sends herself a text last thing at night. So that when she wakes up in the morning, she has a really positive text from herself to start the day. How special is that? So I'm going to try that. I hope you do too. I'll be back shortly with some more guests, but in the meantime, keep being fabulous. Thank you so much for listening to Liberty Free to Be, and I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. If it spoke to you, please don't forget to follow, leave a review, and share with somebody who might need a reminder that they are free to be themselves. You can find me on Instagram at RachelCrew1, and don't forget to follow our growing swimwear brand community over at Liberty Free to Be. If you'd like even more connection and conversation, come and join our free Facebook group, the Liberty Lifestyle Hub, where over 300 women are cheering each other on every single day. Until next time, keep being fabulous.